Hello and welcome to my knitting channel. This is a regular old knitting podcast where I talk to you about what I knit and also what I spin, because there will be some spinning in this video. I'll start with my FO that I'm wearing. This is my Sunshine Tee by Andrea Gaughan. I knit this out of Sandnes 10 Lina and the colorway Sunny Lime. It is a cotton linen viscose blend. It's a fingering weight yarn if you've never worked with it before. This was my first time working with any Sandnes yarn, and I really like this one for summer knits. I'm that kind of person that I just don't want to wear anything heavy or thick in the heat of the summer. I'm not sure that I can get away with this like in 100-degree weather, but I think right now in like the 80s to maybe the early 90s Fahrenheit, I think this actually is a pretty good top to wear. So I'm really excited to have finally made a summer knit that I feel comfortable actually wearing in the summer. Okay, so let's talk about the pattern. So as I mentioned, this is from the pattern designer Andrea Gaughan. It came out fairly recently and I knit it during the Sunshine Tee Cal that Andrea was hosting. It's still going on, it's through the end of June. The pattern is really well written. It's got a lot of great details that I think make this pattern well worth the cost. For example, it includes bust darts, actually 2 sizes of bust darts. And so if you are someone like me who pretty much always has to put in my own bust darts into a more fitted garment, this one has it all written out for you and is accommodating for a range of sizes, which is great. Another fun thing about this pattern is that all of the edges are folded over. So you just knit a little bit extra and then you fold it in and sew it down. It's really easy to do. Andrea writes it out in the pattern and also has a video tutorial, which is helpful. I think it's pretty clear in the written instructions how you're supposed to do that, but I did watch the video tutorials just to make sure, like confirm that I understood what I was supposed to be doing. So yeah, the sleeves and the bottom hem as well as the neckline are all folded, and the neckline has an interesting detail where you actually use the bound off stitches as the like decorative transition between the stockinette and the neckband, and I thought that was really fun and just a great touch. It's something I've never done before. I mean, I've seen it on other patterns, I just haven't knit a sweater with that detail, and especially in a linen or a cotton or a summer yarn, I think it looks really nice. The set-in sleeves are knit top down in the round where you pick up the stitches around the armhole and you knit short rows to shape the sleeve cap. It's very easy and fun to do, and I personally think fitted t-shirts like this look the best when it's a set-in sleeve construction. So as I mentioned, I really liked working with the 10 Lina. I didn't have any issues as far as hand fatigue. I have had issues with 100% linen yarn in the past, and as well as 100% cotton. They can just be pretty hard on your hands, as you know, you're probably aware if you've worked with it. I think the blend of the cotton, linen, and viscose in this yarn really helps make it just a little bit softer and a little bit easier to work with, and it's also very nice to wear. It has that cooling effect when you first put it on. It's very drapey. As far as getting gauge, I did have to go down a needle size. The 10 Lina is a little thinner maybe than your average fingering weight. I guess it's just not as like round and plump as a wool would be, but I don't know, it might be the same wraps per inch as your typical fingering weight. It is very loosely plied, which is another thing you'll find with a lot of summer yarns. It's just kind of something you have to deal with. I have worked with yarns that are very splitty while you're knitting with them, and this one I didn't have that issue. It did tangle very easily. I was working directly from the skeins that the yarn was wound up in, and it really tended to tangle a lot, and I spent a lot of time just sitting there trying to get the knots out and trying to untangle it. And what happens when you work with the yarn too much is it does start to like come apart. So here's like the strands from my swatches, and you can see that they've just really started to come apart and separate. But as I mentioned, I didn't find that to be an issue while I was knitting. I think there was maybe like 1 or 2 stitches where I split the yarn and had to go back and fix it. But as far as like cotton linen yarns go, to me, that's really good. So I would definitely work with this yarn again. These are my 2 swatches. And if you look at them, you'll notice that I knit these flat, not in the round. The pattern does call for you to knit your swatch in the round because most of the sweater or most of the tee is knit in the round, but most of the top of the tee is knit flat. So that's why I wanted to get gauge flat, because I wanted to make sure that all of this fit me properly. So the way that this tee is constructed is pretty standard for a top-down set-in sleeve. You start at the back neck, you knit flat, you knit like a trapezoid, then you start the front, you do the neck shaping, you do all the armhole shaping, and then you join the front and the back to knit in the round below the armhole. So everything, you know, here up is actually knit flat. And I do have a little bit of an issue with my purling, where my purl stitches are a bit bigger than my knit stitches. It's so common of an issue that it's hard to like say that it's an issue, but I know that my flat knitting is a little bit looser than my in the round knitting, and so I wanted to make sure that I got gauge up here, and it mattered less to me, you know, the bottom of the sweater. If that was a little bit looser than the pattern, I was fine with that. So that's why I decided to do that. I think either way is fine. It just kind of depends on what you want. I just wanted a very fitted tee, kind of up here in the shoulders and in the chest, especially because I was adding the bust darts. I just wanted to make sure that my upper chest, that everything up here in my upper chest fit properly. And I am super happy with this fit. I was a little bit nervous that the bust darts were actually going to be too big. So I knit the smaller of the 2 sizes of bust darts, and I believe that added 2 3/4 inches of material to the front of the tee. For me, I typically do about 2 inches of bust darts, so I decided to follow the pattern, and then I got nervous that it was going to be too big, but I kept going with it, and I think it's pretty much fine. The front of the tee is like ever so slightly longer than the back, and you know, usually what you're aiming for with bust darts is to get a fully level hem. So I don't think I needed that extra 3/4 inch, and so if I were to knit this again, I would just do less shaping. It's a really easy mod to make. But again, I just wanted to follow the pattern and see what I ended up with, and I am happy with what I ended up with. Plus, I think this lime color is everything. I am loving it right now. I don't know if it's my color. Sometimes I look at it and I think it doesn't look good on me, and then other times I think it's fine, but I don't really care if a color looks good on me or not. I'm just gonna wear it if I like it. I don't know. I just don't care. Okay, moving along to whips. I have made some pretty significant progress on the socks that I'm knitting for my partner. I talked about these in the last video. So here's how far I've made it. So that's the first one, and I'm knitting them at the same time. Here is the second one. So this is knit from a Schopel Zauberflower. So it's not the Zauber ball, it is this cake of yarn, and it is a gradient. This is the way the gradient works up straight out of the skein. And so I talked about this last time, how I'm kind of color managing this skein. I'm not just knitting straight as it comes. So what I decided to do was start one sock from the inside and one sock from the outside, and that has gotten me this far. So it's a pretty clear gradient for both. where they both start out with the light green. This one transitions into the orange, and then this one into the darker green. And so what would happen if I kept knitting these as I am, so one from the inside and one from the outside, is that this one would stay orange and this one would stay green. And when I talked to my boyfriend about the way the colors would work up before I even cast on, he wanted to make sure that both socks had all of the colors represented. So they didn't need to match, clearly they're not going to, but he just wanted to make sure that this one had orange and this one had green in it, so that they would be like a coordinating pair, which makes sense. And I was happy to do that, and I had a lot of fun creating like a whole schematic of trying to figure out the way that the colors would work up with the least amount of kind of color management on my end, because I didn't want to knit stripes and just break the yarn after each stripe, which is something that I totally could have done, but I liked the gradient. I wanted to keep that in both socks, and I also just wanted to limit how many times I had to break the yarn. So what I worked up is that once I get to this point, I'm almost there with this one, and I just broke the yarn with this one, I will break the yarn and then switch. So I'll start knitting from the outside on this sock, and I'll start knitting from the inside on this sock. And the black is some leftover knitting for olive merino that I had, so that one's also 100% wool, no nylon. So we'll see how these wear, and once they do get some wear, I will report back and let you know. My other whip that I have going on right now is my Handspun Musselburgh hat. I have made some progress on this hat since we last talked. So you can see here, get that needle out of the way. Here is my progress keeper. This is one that I made quite a few years ago when I used to make them. So I've knit, you know, a decent chunk since the last time I showed you this. And here is my total progress. This is some relatively old handspun that spun up to be about a decayed worsted weight. So I'm knitting this on a size 6 needle and just going around and around. I think I do have quite a bit left to go before I can bind this off. This is how much yarn I have left, and I'm just planning on using it all up in this hat. Yeah, lots of green and orange in my knitting life right now. This has been my Zoom meeting knitting and also some of my reading knitting, so just making slow progress on it. I do hope to finish it soon because I'd like to cast on another Musselburgh for a trip that's coming up. So I'm hoping to get this finished soon, but I'm not like really focused on it. The last whip I have to show is a new cast on. As soon as I bound off and blocked my sunshine tee, my yarn arrived for my next sweater cast on, and like the next day I cast on and got started on the sheep camp sweater. This pattern is by Jennifer Berg, who's also the native knitter on Instagram. This is part of the sheep camp cowl that's going on. So Mackenzie from M to the Third and Tim from Starlight, sorry Tim, I can't remember your Instagram handle. The both of them are hosting a cowl for the sheep camp sweater, and as soon as this was announced, I pretty much knew this was going to be my next cast on. I've just been participating in a lot of cowls lately, which I find super fun. So this is my progress on the yoke. I'm, I think, a little over halfway through the color work chart at this point. And I love the colors that I chose for this. So the contrast yarn is Spin Cycle, of course. Who else? This is Spin Cycle dyed in the wool in the colorway Ghost Ranch. This is my first time working with Spin Cycle, actually. I feel like that's kind of sacrilegious to say, but that's fine. I like committing sacrilege, so First time ever working with it. It's a delight. I mean, it's just as good as everyone says. It's worth the money. It's expensive as hell, but like it's worth it. And it's just so pretty. Like I'm literally flying through this yoke. I cast this on a few days ago and I just can't wait to get to the next color change. It's just so much fun. So I'm having a real good time working away. Life has been a little tough lately, so this has just been my escape and it's been wonderful. For the main color, I posted a poll on my Instagram. All right, y'all, I was having some mic issues and it was especially bad during this part, so I'm just gonna do a voiceover. So I was debating between two similar colorways, a Calborn Woolens beige and this Cascade BFL, which is like a cooler toned white or cream, I guess. It might be considered like a light gray, but I think it leans more towards being a cooler toned white. So I posted a poll and it was pretty overwhelmingly this color. It was 70-30 and it confirmed my choice because that's the one that I wanted. I think the light pinks in the spin cycle would have gotten a little lost in the Calborn Woolens yarn that I found, and I'm really loving the way this yarn contrasts so well with the Cascade BFL. This is my first time working with this yarn. It's just 100% Blueface Leicester wool. It's relatively affordable. It's a nice yarn. When it first arrived, I did get a little worried. So the Sheep Camp sweater is a DK weight sweater, and this yarn is listed as a DK weight yarn. And Spin Cycle Dyed in the Wool is a sport weight. So I figured it was all going to work out. But when I got this yarn in person, I realized that this is on the thicker range of DK, closer to a worsted. And when the Spin Cycle arrived, my first time working with Dyed in the Wool, I realized this is on the lighter end of sport weight, closer to a fingering weight. When I first started working with it together, I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I think it's working out just fine. I, of course, being me, got anxious about it and I started looking at different yarns and I thought I need to go out and buy a sport weight yarn, but I was already a decent way through the yoke. I got to about here before I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if this is working. So I also did some Googling about working color work in different weights of yarns, and I found this Tin Can Knits blog post that said I was fine and confirmed all my choices for me and was very validating. And it said that you can totally combine different weights of color work. They just had a couple different guidelines to follow, and this fit well within those guidelines. So basically, the Tin Can Knits ladies blessed my color work, and I feel good about it now. I did swatch, and I blocked my swatch, and I liked the way it looked, but I ripped it out because I wanted to use the spin cycle in my swatch at the start of the sweater. I was going to say I'll let you be the judge, but I don't want you to judge my unblocked color work, so just don't say anything about it for now, and once I get to the very end of this laborious color work yoke, I'll let you know how it turned out. I have no business categorizing this yoke as laborious. This is so much fun to knit. The pattern is wonderful. It's such a fun yoke to knit. Like, it's really intuitive. It's quite simple. There's only a few rounds where you have to catch floats. So in my mind, it's quite beginner friendly and it's just so pretty. I forgot to mention that the stitch marker I'm using is from Starlight Knitting Society. It came in like a little pack of Starlight themed stitch markers, so I thought it was really cute. Lastly, I have Handspun to show you. A lot of Handspun. This is a giant skein. It is around 326 yards of about a sport to DK weight. I was aiming for sport weight. It's a little bit thicker maybe than I wanted. I did do 2 different samples, so I think this was about as close as I could possibly get to what I was aiming for. This is for the Traveler hoodie. So I am participating in the DRK Spin It to Knit It Traveler Cal. I love how this yarn turned out. I cannot wait to cast this on. I honestly might cast it on soon just so that I can see it knit up, even though I've got a long ways to go before I have spun all of my yarn. So this is a combo spin, and I talked in pretty good detail in my last episode about what I was doing to make this yarn. This is a 2-ply worsted spin, so I am drafting using short forward draft. I just want to show you a close-up of this yarn because it is so cool, if I do say so myself. The colors weren't me, right? The colors were the dyers, but I really like how they both worked together. I think it just turned out really, really cool. It's one of those things, like this being my first combo spin, I kind of just had no idea. And, you know, you invest so much time and money into a project like this, and of course I did samples and I swatched and I liked how all of that looked, but you know, when I was first buying the fiber, I was kind of just hoping that it would all work out, and it did. Combo spins are so much fun that I think, you know, I see a lot of combo spins in my future. So this is not all. I also finished this skein. Okay, so I talked about the additional single braid that I was including in my combo spin. So just to recap, the braids that I'm using, I had 3 of this one. This is from Blue Savannah in the colorway Fall Leaves. And the braid that I used to spin this skein was actually a little bit different than the other tube that I have. It was dyed as a gradient. So I am prepping these braids a little different than I did that first one to try to draw out these color changes a little bit longer to kind of match this skein a little bit better. I don't think it's going to look exactly the same by any means, but that's fine. I actually kind of like these braids more than that very first one that I got. But yeah, so I'm kind of treating them a little bit differently. The skein the braid that I'm combining with is from Chickadee. This is a Falkland wool. This one is Polwarth. So I'm combining Polwarth and Falkland. 3 of these, and I'm plying these 2 colorways together. So I am kind of prepping the braids differently and trying to get, again, like longer or shorter color changes, but I'm always plying these 2 together, except for an additional braid that I decided to include in my combo spin because I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't have enough fiber, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't run out. This is 4 ounces, and these braids are 5 ounces, and like I said, I have 3 of each, so I've got a total of 6. So that on its own is 27 ounces. And what I am doing so I'm plying the 5 ounce and the 4 ounce together, which leaves me with an additional ounce of singles from the larger braid. So what I decided to do was then ply the leftover singles with this additional braid to create these sort of like mini skeins that I'll distribute throughout the sweater. I think that's the plan. So I'll kind of count this as like a single skein and knit through this and then this. But yeah, so this was the other little skein that I made. I haven't weighed this one or determined how many yards yet. I lost my labels. I seriously cannot find them anywhere, and I want to be able to tag these. And so I was looking around for them anyway. I just haven't done the stats yet on this, but this is cool. So, okay, let me walk you through what I did. So the additional braid that I used was, it was a BFL, and it was black, dark brown, and teal. And I liked the idea of mixing in black with this yarn. I wanted to just kind of darken it up. So I kind of went back and forth on actually including that braid because I wasn't entirely sure if it was going to work with the other colors, and I really wasn't sure about the teal. I felt like the teal just threw everything off, and even if it didn't clash too much, I just wasn't a huge fan of it, like with these colors. So I decided to just take the teal out of the braid. So you can see in these pictures, I just took the whole braid out, laid it all out on my table, and just went through and pulled apart all of the teal parts. And you'll see that it wasn't perfect. I don't think it needs to be perfect. So I wasn't too particular about it. I just took out all the teal parts. I put those parts aside. They're just in a bag to be used in a different project. So I just used the black and the brown, and I just had all these little pieces that I spun together. I spun them on my electric eel wheel nano because it was such a small amount of fiber. It was probably about 3 ounces after I took out all of the teal. So I spun that on my little tiny nano bobbins, and it was kind of funny because I spun everything for this skein on my EEW 6, and then I was having to ply the 2 bobbins together, and you know, there's such drastic sizes. One's like a 2 ounce at most and one's an 8 ounce. So here's what I made. Again, this is combining the black and brown braid with the leftover singles from my other braid. So we've got orange, gold, the like dark purple, brown. Where's the pink? There's a little bit of pink in there, all plied together with the black and the dark brown braid. I'm just so stoked to cast this on and knit with my Handspun. This is the first time that I feel like I really created a consistent yarn, and it's also the second time that I have spun with the intention of knitting a specific project. So I am just really excited about it, and I think these are gonna look really cool. Oh, and I did pull off my latest bobbin, so I'm still spinning this, but this is the other braid that looks like this. I split this in 2 and just spun it end to end. I was having a little bit of trouble with that. Polwarth is fine. It's a little bit tricky to spin, I find. It's not the worst, but it's certainly not as easy as the Falkland. The Falkland is just so easy to draft. I find I can get the Polwarth like a little bit thinner than the Falkland, but I don't know, I just struggle a little bit more with it. Anyway, so I split this braid in half, and I was working with, you know, a chunk of fiber that was like this wide, and I found that to be just kind of annoying, but I powered through and I spun the entire half of that braid that way. And then for the second half, I got maybe a quarter of the way through and realized I just was not enjoying that. So I split that half in half to create quarters. You know, I'm trying to keep the long color changes that I got by spinning from one of the quarters, and then once I run out of a color, then I'll spin that same color from the other quarter, and I'll kind of go back and forth between those, basically just to match what I did without having to spin like this huge chunk of fiber that's kind of wanting to fall apart anyway. So yeah, working on this, having a blast spinning, finally feeling like I can get consistent singles and a consistent yarn, and I am liking these colors even more than I expected to, and it's just so much fun. I had a lot of fun pulling out my nano as well. I hadn't spun on it since like when I started to learn how to spin, and it's so small. It's sitting right over here. I'm gonna go grab it. This is it. It's just so small. It's so tiny, and it comes with tiny little bobbins. All right, y'all, hope you can fit some crafting into your schedule. Make sure to stay cool out there and lie flat when you need to. All right, see you in the next one.